Hello and welcome to What's the Tea with ACP. We are so excited today to have our amazing guests with us. What's the Tea with ACP is a live web series where featured artists chat with us about what's going on in their lives, their art, and their social experiences. This week we will be discussing the novelty of innovative ideas in opera. We'll be discussing how James came up with his opera innovation and how Jordan came up with Yak Tracker. So, first, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Jordan Pitts. Hello, welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good, good. Looking fabulous.
Thank you, honey. You too.
You're so welcome. So let me just give the audience a little bit of tea about you.
Okay.
So, Jordan is a tenor. He made his principal artist debut to critical acclaim as the young Queen Renata in Ian Bell and Mark Campbell's world premiere of Stonewall with New York City Opera, and continues an active performance schedule of romantic and lyric repertoire. His most recent roles include Romeo in Gounod's Romeo et Juliet with Hawaii Opera Theater, The Magician by Nika Magdoff in Minotti's Council with Opera Saratoga, Don Ottavio in Don Giovanni, Achille in La Belle Hélène, Renuccio in Gianni Schicchi, Alfredo in La Traviata, Younger Thompson in Tom Chipolow's Glory Denied, Pinkerton in Madama Butterfly, and Macduff in Verdi's Macbeth. In 2018, Jordan was both a studio artist with Opera Saratoga's Young Artist Program, as well as an Orvis Studio Young Artist with the Hawaii Opera Theater. Jordan is a community leader and an advocate for young artists globally. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so weird to hear all these things said about me out loud. It's weird.
Listen, we love to see it, okay?
Yeah.
And next, we will have James Mowdy coming in, and we're going to learn a little bit about you too. James, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Elliott. Hi, Jordan.
Hi.
And you're looking fabulous as ever.
Trying.
Yeah. All right. So a little bit about James. James first founded Bespoke in 2011, his Bespoke brand. His clients and colleagues have called him a consummate brand activation expert and a creative analytic who delivers real-world results. Bespoke works with individuals, teams, and the C-suite across a variety of communication strategy and training briefs, specializing in social media and brand strategy, website UX, pitch deck development, executive speaking engagements, and bespoke brand experiences. James built Santa Fe Opera's first strategic storytelling plan, revived and redirected this premier opera company's presence on Twitter, and developed a tailored opera singers or brands training for its globally renowned apprentice singers in 2015. His Periscope Live video insights were featured in PR Daily and presented in PR News San Francisco conference. And since 2013, James' brand communications and strategy skills have played a critical role across various health, wellness, and organizational initiatives at the University of California, San Francisco, from 2014 to 2018. James and Bespoke provide corporate communications oversights and management for company Housing Opportunities Corporation in Northern California and Coachella Valley, brand activation training experiences, and one-to-one brand therapy virtual consulting via Instagram, FaceTime, and Zoom for startup, small businesses, and classical arts professionals. Yes, honey. James launched Opera Innovation.
I think I'm blushing.
Opera Innovation, on convergence with tech, brand culture, and global innovation, a bespoke project. Opera Innovation is a powerful pro bono platform for evergreen content marketing, brand storytelling, and public relations. James is a member of the Santa Fe Business Incubator Council of Business Advisors, COBA, and you can visit that at sfbi.net. Welcome.
Thank you. I couldn't have done it better. That's amazing. I'm blushing. You can tell.
Listen, you are amazing. So, I wanted to talk today with both of you about the innovative ideas that you've come up with to push opera forward. Both of them are social media based. And why I picked the word novelty this week was when we think of novelty, we think of something that is like fleeting, maybe something that's kind of short lived and new, right? But there's another space of the word novelty that we don't really talk about as much. It's the space of new, interesting, innovative ideas. So I'm just going to read you the definition of novelty. So let me get my notes, honey. Okay. So novelty, first definition, is something new or unusual. Second definition is the quality or state of being novel or newness. Number three, a small manufactured article intended mainly for personal or household adornment, so like a little novelty knickknack.
Mhm.
And number four, something such as a song or food item that provides often fleeting amusement and is often based on a theme. So that version is used attributively. So for our purposes, we are embracing something new as a novel idea, a part of novelty. So first we have Jordan with the amazing online kind of forum space for young artist singers, a place where they can come and be connected and talk, frankly, about the young artist space. And we have James's Opera Innovation, which is taking a look at brand and kind of becoming a brand as an opera singer and being able to show, or as a classical musician, really, and being able to show yourself in a light that's putting you out there, but in a way that's not detrimental
Nor traditional.
nor traditional.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, I'm going to go to you first. Can you tell us just a little bit of what inspired you to create Yak Tracker and what it's kind of evolved into over the course of time that you created it?
Yeah, for sure. So back in 2016, 2017, I had hit kind of a wall. I had been in New York for like 4 years. I had spent some time in Europe after grad school doing programs there, and then I came to New York City, hoping to do auditions, and I found myself working at a small marketing company here in Harlem. Actually, I live in Harlem, and I was sort of like, I was being, I was like an administrative assistant, right? So I was like, sitting at my desk. I had a lot of time at my desk, sitting around, and of course, young artists, we all have this account with Yap Tracker, right? Which is where we all find auditions. It stands for Young Artist Program Tracker. Julie Barron runs it with her husband. And it's a great resource. It's a subscription-based website. But that's pretty much like I was spending an exorbitant amount of time on Yap Tracker, filling out applications, trying to like get into young artist programs for almost 2 years in a row, right? And that fall audition season in 2017 is when I first started booking my first gigs. So anyways, I was working there and I was thinking to myself, like, there were a lot of issues with Yap Tracker's sort of like formatting that I just found like it was really hard to know all the time what I was getting myself involved in, what I was auditioning for, how programs were structured, how things were laid out. And it just seemed like a big sort of pile of mystery, right? And I just felt like young artists were kind of like always in the dark about how young artist programs were run, what goes on there. There was a lot of, like gossip around like certain programs, and I was always curious how certain programs were ranked, like how did they become what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had this idea where I wanted to originally, and this is sort of the long-term project, and this will tie into things I'm sure we'll talk about later on, but originally I wanted to create like a listserv website, right? Something like Reddit or really I was like trying to model it off of Etsy, actually, just so that you have like different images, so it was all like, clean and laid out. And I tried to kind of develop this idea, and it did kind of crash and burn at first. And then I realized, like maybe not I don't need to think so outside of the box right now, and I'll just like start small. And so I started a Facebook group for young artists specifically, and I just decided to call it the Young Artist Community Tracker instead of the Young Artist Program Tracker, because I wanted to, like, you know, have it be a place where we shared information about young artist programs. And it became what it is now, which is like we have about 3,000 young artists. Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. We have 3,000 young artists. We have pretty strict rules about not allowing administrative people or program directors or conductors or anybody that has any power to, like, you know, in the hiring process. And it's no offense to them. It's just that we want to keep it a space for young artists and young artists only to share honest and open information. So yeah, that's how that began.
That's amazing. That's so, I mean, it's grown so quickly, really. I mean, when, how long ago did you start it?
So the original group that I created in 2017 was only about like 50 people, and that was around for a year. And then I closed it down and I reopened it in 2019 in February. So it's just a year and a half old. And we had probably, I think, 1,700 members in about 3 days.
That is so innovative.
Wild. It was wild. So it's very young still, and we're still figuring things out just on the grand scale, you know, like.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. James.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us a little bit about Opera Innovation and a little bit about your bespoke work as well? So kind of where did Opera Innovation come from? What sparked that idea? And yeah, just give us a little bit of info on Opera Innovation.
Sure, thank you. So Opera Innovation is sort of it's been an evolution of things. I'm like, where am I looking? Okay, so
good. You're all good.
Do you see me? You know, really what happened was, you know, I founded Bespoke in 2011. And so the idea behind that was to help people tell their story, to help them build a strategy, to help them build a narrative, and to help them meet goals through story. And so that was the very basic premise of Bespoke. And so I needed to kind of create a product, which I did, which was called the Bespoke B-Print, which is sort of an interview process, building a brand, and then giving you sort of this Rosetta Stone of guidance that you can sort of amend as conditions change for your business. So that was the initial product. But of course, you know, around 2012, 2013, I really started to I got the opera bug. And I had liked opera, but I didn't, you know, we were coming to Santa Fe, but we'd come for one or two, you know, operas and then leave, and it was great and whatever. But I really, you know, became a huge opera person. And then I had a client, Brian Asawa, who was my client. So of course he was my, you know, and I had known him for 25 years. I knew him for 25 years rather. So he was sort of my guide in terms of opera, in terms of like what this industry is, what this business is. So anyway, I did some things called Opera Talks, which were on Twitter, which were live Periscope. I was doing my business and growing my business, you know, outside of opera. And then, you know, I got the 2015 season contract with Santa Fe Opera. So that changed the dynamic for me, and I was able to, you know, work inside a business and work with apprentice singers and create the, you know, Opera Singers Are Brands training, which, you know, it's something that was just asked, can you just talk to the apprentices about social media or something, you know? And I was like, well, you know, they know how to do an Instagram post. They know how to, these are really sharp people. So they don't need a social media course. They need maybe a little bit of a business brand training, because opera singers really are startup brands. You're small brands, small businesses. Right. So you have brand identities, you have goals, you have values, so forth. So anyway, I continued on with something called Bespoke Office Hours, where I was interviewing startup founders. My business being in the Bay Area, I'm in Santa Fe right now, but at the time. Silicon Valley adjacent, and that culture and that sort of ethos of Silicon Valley and startup and founder and grinding and all that stuff. It's very part of the Bay Area. So I went to a lot of things, had a few clients that were sort of in the tech space. So anyway, I just kind of remarked on how the conversations that a lot of like conferences are having and so forth, it's changing, but like, I've been to a few conferences. I haven't been to the Opera America National Conference yet. I went online, but that's not exactly the same thing.
A little different.
But it's kind of like opera people talking to opera people about opera things, which is fine. But I really think that there's an opportunity to talk about opera with people who are outside of the opera world. So, because there are so many elements of tech, of brand, of, innovation, these things happen in the opera space. So I wanted to broaden the conversation. So, so I had the idea for Opera Innovation since last summer to start creating some kind of a forum. But then the pandemic came, and I was like, and you and I talked about this, Elliott. It's like, like, how can we help? How can I do something, And so I thought, well, why don't I apply the Opera Innovation idea to help, individuals, people in the opera space who are doing small businesses, how are, tackling brand issues, innovating, whatever the case might be. And not to mention, one of the items in our Venn diagram is culture. So that can mean a lot of different things.
Right.
And that's really where opera's going, because I think the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and the cry for equity, and it's like that's it. So it's changing. And so, I mean, these are the meteors that have hit the earth, so to speak, for the opera industry. So it's forcing the opera industry to leave its 1950s studio system model, which is sort of my feeling. I mean, I'm not putting that on anybody. That's just sort of how I look at it, and turn into a business that's dynamic, that's transparent, and where ideas can happen and grow. So that's why I started Opera Innovation as a blog to show people contribute. It's not James' show. I write little intros here and there and I edit, but it's just to give people a platform and to help them and in a pro bono way put their message out there across my channels and target it like I would a client.
Which is so great and so needed for so many artists. I mean, yes, our work right now is limited, but a lot of artists are doing things outside of the box and still creating, and we still need to be able to promote ourselves and have our faces out there and have people engage with us. And what an amazing way of doing that through your platform. And it's just so necessary and needed. And thank you, both of you, for both of these amazing things to help our operatic community. So a question, as people that have been watching know, I like to have the guests. We like to have the guests come up with a couple of questions. And so the first question that I'd like to go to, because James mentioned, with the pandemic happening, and obviously right now we're all everyone's affected. And artists are, some young artists are returning back to work or trying to, hopefully with safety precautions. Other young artists are like, absolutely not, and trying to refocus on other objectives and goals. So this question is from Jordan, and it is, how will COVID-19 affect young artist programs moving forward in the future? Will they be more transparent or less? And what could be the long-term effects? So it's a big question, but would you like to start, Jordan, and explain a little bit?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a huge question. And I think that first things first is that something has to change, right? Like it's not going to be the status quo from here on out. There are changes happening in our industry, not just with young artist programs. We all found out about Columbia Artist Management yesterday. We saw the Met close its doors for almost an entire season. We've seen opera companies go under and people, change their paths and things like that. So I think it's safe to say that something has to change. The question is, okay, young artist programs in the state that they've been operating in just aren't sort of practical anymore. I mean, not that they'll cease to exist, but I think that in just the format that they've been operating in, I don't think they're practical anymore. The amount of pay people are getting, the way the companies use young artists to sort of like fill in compromario slots, or different ways that they cast different operas. I just think that like it has to be overhauled. It has to be changed, and I think it's going to be a collaborative process, figuring out what that new structure needs to be. It's going to be an ongoing conversation. Already, you see things happening with the audition process, where HGO is combining their audition process with several other companies to make it more streamlined. Make it more streamlined, so young artists have less just application here, application there, casting a wide net. You do one, and then you sing for everybody. So there'll be definitely a sense of community and cooperation between opera companies, I think, that hasn't existed before, because this crisis has exposed so many parts of our industry that were weak to kind of begin with. You know what I mean? It was being done on the fly, and it's like, okay, well, we're doing Rusalka next season, so I need young artists to sing this and this and this and this, and it's just going to have to change. So I think whatever comes out of this, to sort of put it on breath, like whatever comes out of this moment of change and shifting in the structure, I think is going to have a long-term effect in the future for the security of young artists, because we realize that this could happen anytime, right? This kind of pandemic, not that it happens all the time, but it really only took this to watch our industry sort of deteriorate. And I think that is it's disheartening, but it's real, and we're going to have to prepare for it. So how do we create a safe space where people can feel like, okay, even if something like this happens again, my job and my job security aren't threatened so devastatingly? Nobody was ready for it. So how do we put things in place, whether those are precautions, like focusing on health and safety, focusing on, like building a structure around benefits and having housing, like things that you need, just fundamental things you need as a human being while you're doing your job. And I think also a lot of people have been looking to the European system, just the way that like the Junge Studio are formed and people live in those programs. So yeah, a lot. I mean, I'm curious to hear what you guys think as well about what might happen, but that's where I am at.
For sure.
Yeah.
What about you, James? What is your take on it?
Well, I think just based on sort of my not really insider track, just some of the things that I know about what's happening, for instance, with Santa Fe. I think in terms of the future, I think safety considerations are paramount. That is like the number one thing, and you mentioned that, Jordan. 100%. I think that's going to affect everything, and it's changing everything. I think that how do you make the experience safe and secure across the board in every way, shape, or form? Getting there, isolating if you need to, rehearse, everything, but new policies and procedures, around what is it, what are we really offering? What can we realistically offer given this new paradigm of COVID and an unknowable timetable? And you mentioned this as well, Jordan. I think there's a digital video element that I think will become standardized across all programs. When you were talking, I thought of something, and he'll love this. I haven't actually met him yet. His name is Ted Pickle, and he's started something, I think, with a couple of other people. It's called Conduit Studios Media, and they're doing essentially kind of audition sort of performance videos for artists. And so, businesses like that may there's an opportunity there perhaps to, contract with opera houses or with programs or case maybe. So that, and most production companies could do this, but he comes from the opera world. He is apparently an apprentice as well. Transparency, I think, is going to be required, because I think I'll say, just in terms of my familiarity with what's going on with the Soloist Coalition, the AGMA Soloist Coalition, and just, what I see on social media, there is a much higher no BS attitude, and artists are empowered because they have to be, because if they don't become empowered, they will not, they can't work in opera any longer. They'll have to leave and not pursue their career or their dream. I think in terms of the applications, the process, and the experience for singers, I think that it could become a buyer's market. I think they could flip, because if there are no singers, there are no programs. And I think there is solidarity right now, I think, in ways that maybe didn't exist before. Yeah. You have bargaining power, I think, not only through the Soloist Coalition, but I think I'm seeing artists sort of partner with their management firms or their managers in blocks of people. So together, all those blocks become, you have negotiating leverage, I think, and you can negotiate better conditions, better situations, and so forth, because it's a business.
Right. And
it cannot be a seller's market and expect, happiness across the board. And I think that's part of the problem. It's just been catch as catch can with opera, in terms of people. It's hard. I mean, you are in the entertainment business, and it's very unfair. It's very difficult. But I think that in terms of, there is no SAG-AFTRA. Those kinds of things, like if you're looking at the Hollywood model, I think those things, bad things happen, and there's inequity and there's unfairness. But I feel like opera singers are sort of unnecessarily handicapped. But I think now is the time that will change. And I think that singers, so rather that companies should start to court singers more than before, in a similar way to like how tech companies court star programmers or what have you, or universities sometimes do that too. Like the Ivy League, if you will. I think that right now, and this will be like the last part of my answer.
You're
okay.
This is what we need.
Okay. I think that it is about survival of the fittest. So, we talked about that meteor of COVID and, a cry for equity that has hit the opera industry. There are people who are making resurgences back in Europe, shall we say, a couple of people. And I don't think they deserve the platform, but they're doing that. That's fine. They can do that. But those people are not part of Opera 2.0. I think all of you are part of Opera 2.0, because opera will change and will evolve. That was the thing I wanted to say. There's so many programs that, the young singers are the bread and the butter for everything, and that model is, I think, in many ways exploitative. And yes. That's an understatement. But I think that those programs who depend so heavily on young artists, when young artists are demanding more, and they won't take up, those companies will cease to be, I think, in some ways. So that's the end of my answer.
No, I totally agree with both of you 100%. I think that due to the pandemic, singers and companies have had to think outside the box, right? We've had to reconfigure the way that we think about opera. And obviously, because of the other issues that are happening right now in our country, these feelings are heightened, right? Right. Exactly. these feelings are heightened, right? Because we have the time to really focus on what is happening and all of those little, Jordan was talking about cracks, right? All those little cracks in the foundation that this house has been sitting on for hundreds of years.
So long.
Hundreds of years, right? So now opera companies have to start acknowledging that there are cracks in the foundation systemically,
Yeah.
and not just call for like, oh, well, maybe we should do blind casting. Well, no, because that actually in the long run is not going to be helpful if you have the same people making the same decisions after you cast the people blindly, right? You have to think about the root of the issues and how do you change the root of these issues. I think as far as young artist programs moving forward in the future, I think that there's going to be a lot more well, I hope that there's going to be a lot more communication between the artists and the company, more community engagement and involvement between artist, company, and the community, fostering real connections that are long-standing to make sure that, oh, well, I know that when blah 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 was at this young artist company, they were treated so well and they were respected, right? It's not just about, let me be frank, it's not just about how good your opera company looks on paper. It's also about how good your opera company looks behind the scenes, because we artists talk to each other. And if experiences are not correct, it's going to affect your income. So why not just make sure that you have the best experience for your young artists and for your artists in general, so that we want to come back and return. We want to do great work for you. And in the long run, you're still making money, because let's be frank, opera is art, but opera is business.
Yep.
Big business.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's going. And I think actually one of the second amendment to the question was what could be the long-term effects. And I think that the long-term effects, I pray that the long-term effects are going to be for good. Everyone talks about how opera has been a dying art form since the beginning. I don't think so. I think that it has slowly been leached, right? It's slowly been leached in a way that causes it to have one funnel of information, monetary need, monetary business, socio-economic space. It's been funneled that way to be elite. And when something is elite, it's on the fringe sometimes.
Yep.
And I think the way that we move forward that will cause lasting effect is switching our thoughts about opera as a whole, looking at opera as this is the way that I sing here, and that's it. There's nothing different between that and pop music, or that and musical theater, and that and R&B or rock or jazz, whatever it is. You're telling a story through song, right? That's what opera is. So it's just about I think it's a rebranding. It really is a huge rebranding, and I think that this is the crux, right? Either we're gonna rebrand and keep growing, or the companies are gonna not, and then they're gonna lose business. And all those small little companies who were striving before the pandemic are gonna be popping up and doing the thing. So that's my take.
I agree with that. I think that it's the dinosaurs, really. Okay, and you can use that illusion. The meteor hit. What happened to the dinosaurs?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're nimble, if you may not have a lot of money. If you have money, that's great. If you've got cash, if you got that, that's great. But being the United States, we'll speak to that. We don't have that state funding like Germany might, or other places. And even they complain that they don't have enough, but at least they have something significant. Whereas we don't have anything. But it's those nimble companies, those small companies with low overhead that I think are the future of opera. And some dinosaurs might die. I will mention, because you already mentioned it, Jordan, but I think that the Columbia Artists closure, I think it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine for opera.
And yeah. I
Yeah.
know what you mean. And I'm so hesitant to say that, but I know exactly what you mean. But sorry to interrupt you. But yeah.
No, that's okay. All I'll say is that, it's kind of like the airlines. So the airlines have had like Pan Am is a good example, and the TWA, and like these big, they just couldn't function. They couldn't survive in the new reality of deregulation and all these other things that happened. In the same way, I think that in this new climate, old models won't work. And that, I was just talking to a friend of mine about this, and she's very knowledgeable about these things. Kristen O'Keefe, I'm going to give her a shout out. She's amazing.
Yeah.
She, that artist managers are going out on their own. I mean, they're becoming their own startups. They're innovating. They're changing the models. Things are blown up. So they're blown up, but they're reforming as something else.
Right.
So I think in the same way for companies, that companies will change. Companies may break up. New models will exist. It'll be digital. It'll be live. It'll be, so it's this crazy time. So yeah, I don't know. But I agree with everything you said. I kind of lost the track there.
Well, also, I want to highlight actually Jordan's second question, because it kind of goes right in line with what we were talking about with like the German system and such. So Jordan's question was, how might the Young Artist Program grow and evolve to become more of a real job and less of an unpaid internship? How will its infrastructure need to change to support young artists? I love this question.
I said what I said.
I love this question because,
good question.
That I think that people tend to look at young artists as, low, easy workers, right? Like the worker ants of the colony. They're the thing that they really are sometimes the thing that keeps the company afloat.
100%.
And if you're not treating your low-level employees well, then eventually those employees will revolt and your company will shut down.
Yeah.
So what would be some suggestions that you all have for creating a space of it being like a more of a job instead of a opportunity? Because that word gets thrown around a lot. Opportunity.
I get the exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. As in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's words, exposure won't pay my bills, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a lot of ideas about this, obviously, just because I see this happening, and I see people revolting. Like, I see people like having these revolutionary things where they're like, I'm done with young arts programs. Yap Tracker isn't getting my money. This is not happening. I'm going to forge my own path. A lot of people feel very empowered by that, which is all well and good. But I think the biggest issue, again, if you look at and I had a series of live talks I was doing on Yap Tracker, specifically about Europe. I got a whole bunch of questions about European houses and how they work. I had a great talk with Kelsey Loretano, who's in the opera studio in Frankfurt. She's a Juilliard grad, phenomenal mezzo. But she was talking about how fundamentally the Opera House has state funding, right? Like it has, funding from the government, right? So our correlation would be either state funding or federal funding to support it, especially through hard times, COVID, a season or two that doesn't go as planned with ticket sales or whatever. All of that aside, the young artist programs are their own entity, right? It is in essence an actual apprenticeship or residency. It is its own fest program a lot of the time. You're there for a certain amount of time. You do a number of roles. Just like the sheer volume of stuff that you have to do is enormous. And the people that get these jobs have to be very qualified. Obviously, there is a bit of nepotism sometimes with certain houses. I feel like that happens in the arts a lot. We can't necessarily always avoid that. We would like to. We'd like equity for everybody. So I think that's important. But I think the biggest thing that happens is that there is funding in place. When we look at the American system, it's not that we have to all of a sudden come up with a petition to really ask the government for more funding. I think that we just have to really look at how we can restructure the finances of opera houses to create programs that are sort of like brick and mortar, right? Like they're very, very systematically laid out whose responsibilities are what. I think we need to move the apprentice or let's say studio artist, right? Because a lot of programs have these like split tiers, right? There's like a higher tier and a lower tier. I think we need to move the lower tier down to being something where college students or people that are in their education can really function in that program well. They're not covering leading roles or compromising roles. They're there to maybe sing in the chorus and do that work. And they're the ones that are getting, the opportunity to have that exposure, right? But there's less at stake for them because they're not a working artist that's 30 years old that's been out of school for, God knows how long and actually has bills to pay, but is just thankful to have a job. Like we need to actually put that level where it needs to be with people that can afford to take that risk, and then move the top tier into a place where people are earning a living wage. Now that doesn't just mean minimum wage. That means a living wage, especially taking into consideration where the Young Artist Program exists, right? Like if you're in San Francisco and you're at Marilla and you're making $350 a week and you have to find your own housing, that is impossible. Like how, I mean, I'm throwing numbers out there. These are arbitrary, but I mean, regardless, San Francisco's cost of living is exorbitantly high, Mm-hmm. Even the Lindemann program here at the Met in New York City, it's like, sure, it's like, it's a living-ish wage, but for New York, I mean, you're scrounging to really be able to eat every week. And it's like, how do you expect performers of a very high optimum level, we're talking Olympic style singing, to perform well and live well in these situations where I mean, the Young Artist programs are basically like, I mean, you're getting roles, right? I had a friend that was in the Lindemann who sang a huge leading role at the Met and didn't make the performance fee, was still in the Young Artist program with all its walls and red tape. And it doesn't make sense. So I think really looking at the financial structure of the opera company from the top down, and if we can't form a Young Artist program in that opera company that treats people with equity, hires people of all different walks of life, diverse, what have you, and gives them a living wage, then we should not have that Young Artist program. Or have a lower level Young Artist program situation where we really are, unfortunately, does that limit the job pool? Yes, but I think that it's really important to note that if you cannot afford to pay young artists a living wage, especially in their late 20s, early 30s, I think it's a no-go. That's just me. But I'm, again, curious.
Well, totally, because also we have to think these artists have to live when they're not doing the program. So a lot of artists have leases or have to pay another rent. So you're talking about, okay, well, now I have to go to this program, but they don't provide housing. So I have to drive cross country and then I have to pay rent back home because if you're not in New York, God forbid you find a subletter,
right?
If you're not in a city. And, it's just, it can be so incredibly financially taxing that it affects you mentally, which in turn affects the voice, which in turn affects the whole time that you're there.
The time you're there and your audition season after that, right? Because then you're like, how do I go through that again? This is what happened to me. I had PTSD. I was like,
no, it's real.
I get it. Yeah.
7 weeks at a program that paid me $125 a week as a 27-year-old, Yeah. And they did not reimburse my gas. Yeah, there was great housing, but I had to have a car. I had to drive to and from rehearsals. They didn't reimburse my gas. There was no real travel stipend. It was wild. And then I went into all this debt, being like, this is something I have to do. I have to put in my time. And in the long run, am I glad that I did it? Yes, absolutely, because I wouldn't have the experiences to build a career from now. But at the time, it was just asinine. I was like, this is wild. I have to. And then 13-hour rehearsal days. come on, like
That's insane.
yeah.
It's so what do you think, James, being a kind of a person who's a little bit on the outside looking in, what do you see as a potential way to help this need?
Yes. Yeah. My opera singer career has not started yet either, in addition to my TV one. So we talked about that earlier. But anyway, not to get overwhelmed. But that's okay. Yeah, seriously, I think that there needs to be, in some cases, because we're not going to, no funding's going to come from, this government, certainly not. But the national, our country's just not that way, unfortunately. It may happen, but it won't happen for a while, But there needs to be more of a value add, I think, from companies. So companies may not be able to, they should, of course, but they may not be able to pay you more. So I think that if that's the case, always, if you can pay artists more, you should, because of all the things that you discussed, Jordan. I think some programs do house people, which is very helpful and takes the worry out of that. I think Santa Fe is one of those companies that does that. In some regards, no, okay. I thought they did. I wasn't sure. Okay, anyway.
It's been talked about to admin, so it's something that's on the radar.
Well, let's hope it happens. I mean, it should. But Santa Fe is not the same as New York City or San Francisco, which is like beyond. So yeah, I think if they cannot pay artists more, even though they should, I think, I'll just use my example. Well, I'll use my two examples. The first one, in 1990, I was offered an internship with Chiat Day Advertising in San Francisco, which is a very, very famous sort of really huge advertising firm. I don't think it exists any longer. It was absorbed by something else. I don't really follow that anymore. But in any case, it paid $150 a month. A month, and it was 3 months, and I was supposed to be going to France in the summer, or sorry, in the fall. And so it was like, I need to make money before I go on my trip abroad, and I have to finance that. It was I had my school paid for, but I had to live in Paris, so I had to turn it down. I couldn't do it, and that's just what it was. And I ended up working in an art gallery, and I had an amazing year, or summer rather. Art gallery, and then I went to Alaska and worked in Alaska with my friend, and that was amazing, working on a train, and it was kind of one of those once in a lifetime kind of experiences. But I couldn't pursue that opportunity. So now, right now, I'm working, as I did in 2015, more like on site, but because we're doing what we're doing with this pandemic. I am working with the 2020 apprentices. I'm in collaboration with the apprentice program to do brand therapy, which is something that I do through my website, which is pro bono brand consulting. And this is the thing that is part of my trying to give back to singers and artists during this time, to just counsel them on all the things I do, telling their story, their strategy, online initiatives, things like that. And so I think that this is a gift that I'm giving, and this is probably the only company I would do that with. I'm doing this out of my own time. SFO already offers pretty exhaustive support to its artists, and counsels them, and it's a great program. And my partner and I are big supporters. But I think generally speaking, I think companies should be much more hands-on in terms of helping their artists, like during the experience, making sure that they're having a good experience, fixing things that might be going wrong. I mean, we've heard some stories since the pandemic happened of, a lot of like racial incidents that were just like beyond the pale. I mean, just ridiculous experiences that people had and they had to put up with, and that's not appropriate. But I think that companies should leverage their networks so that they are the singers' networks. So in other words, be like, after the program's over, connect them to those conductors, connect them to those artistic directors, follow up, make sure that there's some sort of follow up after the program's over, so that the networks that these companies have, that with the donors, whomever, that there's continued nurturing of the apprentice artist or the young artist as they proceed in their career, and just like being there for them, because that will reinforce loyalty to that company. Mm-hmm. And so when people do become, it just builds the brand, and it builds the reputation, which I think would be, it speaks to what you're doing, Jordan, in terms of, like, this company was really there for me, and they paid me, and they did this, and even when I was already over here, they made a connection over there, and whatnot.
Right, and that's a big for a lot. Sorry, this is echo. Weird. Yeah, that's a big thing for a lot of people. There's like professional development aspect to the young artist program that people look for, that frankly I don't think happen the majority of the time. I think like the big, top tier level programs, obviously it happens because you're in that space, and there are a lot of doors that open sort of automatically, which I think has its own issues, because like we should be talking about like, closing the gap between the level of houses, and that kind of thing. But again, to make it equitable for everybody, I think that it's important to like note that the professional development thing, connecting people, continuing those connections, auditioning at the end of programs versus the beginning of programs. Those sometimes you're a little tired at the end of your summer, so you want to actually move your audition to the beginning or whatever. Like, dealing with that kind of thing, I think is important for a lot of people, and would definitely abate the sort of like, the revolution that is sort of, coming with young artists saying that they don't want to be part of young artist programs anymore. Right.
I think, to your point, I just kind of continuing with what you said, I think it's kind of like, like universities have alumni groups, right? Mm-hmm. And they help you, and then you come back, and you help the new alumni like enter the workforce, and it's just this chain that just continues, and it's supportive across the board, And so I think if something like that was modeled, I think it would really help. Just the experience, and it would build the program, and it would create, as you said, Elliott, it would not look great just on paper, but it would actually be behind the scenes real and a good thing, and people would want to go there and be a part of it.
Exactly. Well, it sounds like a new position was just created within the opera space of young artist liaison, the person who connects you between your artist contract and your professional, outside gigs. Opera companies who are listening, honey, we are giving you ideas. So, James a little props there, but that's a fabulous idea. I mean, it's so obvious, like when you think about it, it's like such an obvious thing to kind of like create, right, or foster. And some programs do really do that well. They like, have a whole audition panel set up so you can put it out there and you can get connected. And, some companies not so much, or they put you out there and they don't really give you the skills per se to know how to even interact with the people that you need to talk to afterwards. So it's a lot of, I think, I think it's also companies working together to figure out, like, I don't want to say curriculum because it's not school, but a base of, artist treatment and engagement.
And I think people, right, exactly. And I think people need to follow that across the board, right? Like, it needs to be a standard of operation. I mean, again, like, not every single thing is going to work for every single company, given how their season's structured, what their donors want, because that's all in consideration. But I think it's important to have like a standard treatment of maybe system, right? The program's laid out a specific way, and we're following it across the board, no matter what level we're at.
Totally. So I want to pop over to another question. which is a part of James' question, which is, oh wait, let me make sure I get the right one, honey. So this is kind of more specifically to Jordan, which is, could the Yak tracker become the glass door of opera? Something that currently doesn't exist. Mobile is everything. So are there plans for an app? Ooh.
Okay, so yes, there are plans for an app. It was funny when I saw this question, I was like, okay, someone's in my mind. Someone's got.
We're mind melded, right?
Yeah, so, there are plans for an app. First, I want to actually build. I have someone helping me build out the website. Again, like it's going to be kind of like Reddit, but sort of with like a subscription wall. It's definitely not going to cost anything for anybody. There will definitely be like in-app features I think that people can purchase down the road. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way to create the app just as like a listserv or a forum. Glassdoor of Opera, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure that it's necessarily going to be like, okay, I'm posting job opportunities, and I think that you need to I don't know. I kind of just want it to be like a forum where people come together and just talk about experiences, and then we're able to categorize which opera company, has what going on.
Well, I was thinking when I saw Glassdoor of Opera, I was thinking, well, it would be interesting if there was a component to it that spoke about like how, like you I think it was maybe almost a year ago, you created kind of like a spreadsheet, right, and got everyone's information about young artist programs, and
Right.
you were able to create almost like a glass door of saying like, this is about what's
Pretty
happening.
much, yeah. I mean, in that way, definitely, yeah. I mean,
not so much jobs, I think, but like just in terms of this is what the application process is like. This interview, this is how I look at the leadership, or just kind of like giving people insider.
Yeah. So then, yeah, I guess yes, but I mean, we're definitely gonna have a place where like those documents are free and easy for accessible for everybody to see. Where does your young artist program fit in the grand scheme of of your pay level, the benefits that are offered to you, and then constantly updating that information with companies rather than just through, hey, everybody leave it in the comments.
Right.
Actually partner with companies, and then that actually in a way does kind of hold people more accountable, right? Because then the information
transparency.
But you know what? The other thing about that is that you could do ratings.
Right.
Well, that's the biggest.
So it's like, you want your rating to get better? Okay, well,
people to rate them so that like it becomes a competitive market for people to like actually have young artist programs that's again, brand building along with what James is talking about, like allowing the opportunity to see like this is a large pool of people that have come together to like actually judge and like from our perspective.
It's exactly which I think you just saw. Like, it's what Jessica Fischenfeld just said. Hey, Jessica. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's kind of Yelpy.
Yeah.
That's also another thing you can. Those reviews. I mean, you could anonymize things so that people feel they can share, and it's not like my name. This is where I live. Blacklist forever or whatever.
Yeah.
Rating is important, I think, and it's power. And Yelp is very problematic for small businesses, and a lot of people go in there and abuse it. And I'm not really a huge Yelp fan because I don't like really what they do. But the concept is good, and I think, but Glassdoor is, it's not. You have to have an account, and you have to have an account. You can be anonymous, and people can respond, but there's a process around that. But it's a healthy check-in, I think, for everyone, and it is that transparency, I think, that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's long term. I'd like it to really be an app that everybody can download, and I really want to put it in front of people that are just even pre-young artist age. I want people really in undergrad to have it, before they begin auditioning, just so they know what they're getting into. And I want it to be really transparent, really easy for people to find information. especially.
And I wanted to mention, because this is something I saw, and it was, I think it was Brianna Hunter on Opera America. Or it was something that she was talking about. But it was also in terms of creating something similar to what you're talking about, but in terms of, you know, like the experience for BIPOC people. Like in terms of like, what is this like? Like, what is really going on with this company? Is this a safe space for me? Or is this like, just like, you know, sharks in the water? Or is this, you know, like really being real about that?
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's like obviously a big deal for me, but that's something that I'm trying to integrate into all of this as well. And I've tried to integrate into Yak Tracker as well right now, just because, but I always have, right? I've always kind of like put that at the forefront of like, okay, well, you know, the experience my white colleagues are having at a particular job is not always the same experience that I'll be having, or that, you know, Elliott might be having at that same job. So that in mind as well. Yeah, really important.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, even just from the time that you've started Yak Tracker to now, the information that I and other young artists have gained from being able to just speak with one another has been really invaluable. And it takes this, like, you know, there's a little bit of an air of like secrecy to everything. Like, it's like,
Everything.
oh, I can't talk about how much I made here. I can't talk about, you know, and it's like, no, we need to actually be talking about these things.
It went on for too long, and this is the thing that happened, right? It became a career of its own. Like there was like the young artist's career, and,
Right.
and certain people were not able to escape that pigeonhole of what they were doing, right? They were young artists to an extent. Like, you know, I mean, there were people that were commenting on some of the original posts that they had been to like 20 programs or something like that. And it's like, okay, what is again, with the professional development piece, it's like, what is the link? Where then would we go? And it was always this like veil of secrecy over like, okay, you know, how are people getting into these programs? Who are the people that are getting into these programs? We see their casting announcements, but it's like, where are these people from? What schools did they go to? What are their experiences? Like, it was just always this mystery to me. And I live in New York City, and I was at the auditions and I met all these people, and it's like, you know, like, who are these people? So it was really important to expose it in a way, and I wanted people to just be upfront. And I tried to make, you know, of course, we all know that the internet is not 100% private all the time, but I tried my best to allow people to make anonymous postings if they'd like, or comment on things anonymously or share information anonymously, just in case they feel, you know, unsafe about it, and also just keep the safe space as much as I possibly can. So, yeah.
And you've been doing a great job with that. So,
thanks, girl.
Congratulations. You're welcome. I want to move on to our final question, which comes from James. And I kind of have a shortened version for the screen, but I'm going to read the full version because I love the full version of this question. So it is a question for you both. So this is to Jordan and I. Perhaps beginning with the mission and vision of All Compass Projects, a socially conscious performing arts collective, how might other small companies or even opera management firms, managers, and rosters begin using their collective power as business leaders and artists to create real change within the opera industry and the A House companies, i.e., like the Agma Soloist Coalition platform and objectives? So, how can small companies use collective power as business leaders and artists create change within the opera industry? Is that kind of the space, Jan?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. So I'll jump in. Well, I think that the first step would be talking to the local artists. I think that there are so many companies that don't make use of the artists that are living in their backyard, or even I'll be frank. I talked about this previously on another episode. I've reached out to opera companies that are near me saying like, hey, I'm gonna be here for an extended amount of time. This is my resume. Like, this is where I've been. Like, I'm a legit opera singer. And either you just don't hear a response or they kind of, blow you off, right? So it's like, how do we foster more connection? I think it's all about connection. And when you say collective power, right, I think it's about creating connections locally and creating connections with your community. Because doing that, then you start to create, okay, well, I'm this opera company and I'm a green opera company, right? And I live in this city, this small city, but I'm a green opera company. Once you start connecting with other local businesses, right, you create a local network. And that local network is going to be there to help support you as well as you support them. So I feel like a lot of companies don't do that. I mean, maybe bigger companies, it's harder to do that. Maybe they want bigger brands to be able to support whatever. But I also think that we need to start relying on what's around us. Because, for many years, everyone's like, you have to go to New York if you want to do it. You have to go to New York if you want to make it happen. You have to go to New York, blah, 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 blah. But really, the truth is you can make opportunities happen in your own backyard, especially if you're connecting with other businesses. So if you're a small business, connect with another small business. Say, oh, well, we have this small opera company. We'd love to, we have 2 local artists. We would love to have them come in to your restaurant and sing for an hour. Easy connection. You get new audience members into your audience, into your seats. You have a local connection. It looks better in general. It's about sustainability, right? And so I think that local engagement, whether it be artists or other businesses, even arts organizations. I feel like a lot of companies don't connect with arts organizations. I mean, we have a lot out here. I mean, AGMA Soloist Coalition right now, Soloist Coalition Young Artists, Black Opera Alliance, just so many different organizations. NAM, the National Association of Negro Musicians, has been around for over 100 years. They're the oldest Black arts organization. I have not once ever seen an opera company say, oh, well, we are connected with this organization. Unless it was a Black opera company.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've never seen that. So maybe it's about fostering not just connections with the community, but also with surrounding business, organizations, and artists. Especially right now, you have to, I know this sounds weird, but you have to source locally, quite frankly.
You have to. Yeah. I mean, I think I would agree with you. I mean, like, just since this happened, I mean, and I know I keep talking about Santa Fe, but I'm here, so I'm just going to just speak to it.
It's
just
awesome.
an example. I was not paid for this. It's not an ad. Excuse me. There's a jewelry store in Santa Fe that they're donating 15% of their sales for the entire summer to Santa Fe Opera. And just this weekend, Joe Illick and Andrea Feinberg, their opera Unshakable was shown in partnership with the Center for Contemporary Art here in Santa Fe in their living room series. So there's collaboration that's happening, and they're reaching out and so forth. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of disaster here in New Mexico, in terms of the Native American community. I mean, like, that's kind of the most important thing going on right now. So people can't do, people don't have bandwidth oftentimes. But I do agree with you. I think that, but in the past, Santa Fe connected with the pueblos in the area with regard to the John Adams opera, which the name is escaping me right now.
Oh,
how's that possible?
I know.
Sorry?
I was in it.
Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, right? The
Atomic,
Atomic.
Dr. Atomic. Thank you. I'm like, why is this escaping me right now? Anyway, but it's important, and that's real. And you have to be, if you are place-based, you need to be connected to the place.
Mm-hmm.
In every way, across all cultures, across all people. And I think Santa Fe has done a good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that my experiences of opera on the coasts dramatically different than my experiences of opera here.
Yes.
There's just there's barriers to entry. You have to be on a list. You have to Here I can go backstage. I can meet people,
Mm-hmm.
and you meet all the people from all over the world who are the names, if you will, or the people doing the things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very casual and low key. And it's a great networking spot. I wrote a blog about it. I called it the sort of the Davos and the Sundance of opera. It's kind of everything and all things. I think Santa Fe is a great sort of place where people kind of just throw off those titles and so forth. Just chill and meet and connect, and it's a great place in that way. But I agree with you absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree as well, Elliot. I think that's like the biggest thing for me. I think back to my college years. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I went to my undergrad just outside of Buffalo at SUNY Fredonia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and then I went to Boston University for my master's, but that's separate. I think what's interesting about when I was in college is that Fredonia is so close to Buffalo. And a ton of the Fredonia Music School, like we had some of the best singers in the world, in my opinion, and we had all this talent. And the Buffalo Opera companies, sure, they hired people every once in a while, but I just never really fully felt like there was a community initiative that I could join in on. Years later, when I was already in New York and already established having some gigs and things, I got a job back in Buffalo, and I was like, why was this not happening when I was there? You know what I mean? I just felt kind of like, well, this is weird. But then I see certain companies that have this sort of from the ground up initiative. There's a great company that I just did a virtual recital for in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis called N Opera Theater. They were previously Arbeit Opera Theater, and they pretty much only hire local singers. Every once in a while, if they need someone and they don't have that voice type or whatever, they want to, they'll, expand their pool, but they pretty much hire only local singers. They pay people a living wage. They really do their homework, and they're really great about diversity, equity, representation, all of that stuff, forming a diverse audiences. They have partnerships within their community, and that's the kind of thing that we need, even at the large scale, right? Like we're talking, New York City Opera, the Metropolitan Opera, those kinds of things, Santa Fe. We need more community engagement to really support and uplift not only our local singers, but also just our local community, arts organizations, right? National level, community level, all of those things. So
totally. Yeah. I really think that once that starts to happen more, because like I was saying before, opera has been groomed to be a space for the elite. It originated there, right? Operas were commissioned for kings and queens and people who could do that, who had free time, right? So it comes at a space of restructuring, thinking about how we can be truly an equitable business without having to rely so incredibly heavily on donation-based space, right? Most of opera is either patrons, donations, things like that. And so it's also not just anymore about that, because we can't just be about that. Or it's also about connecting with people who are outside of the normal operatic space that have the money to do so. People with money want to spend their money.
They do.
When I got a little bit of money, I want to spend my money. So,
Yeah.
so people with big bucks want to spend their money, and they want to spend it on things that they can see. They can see actual results, and with opera, you see results.
Yeah.
Right? You can, and the thing about it that's so cool is that you can see the idea go from one thought in a person's brain to the libretto, then to the score, then to the planning, then to the rehearsals, then to the stage, then to the performance. What better excitement and climax is that than to say, I helped support that? I helped make that flower bloom. I gave that flower the water that it needed. I helped, plant the seed into the ground. And I just feel like that's where we have to go now, is really being like, look, we're not trying to be an elite space anymore. We don't want that. We want to actually just sing and bring you stories and sing in our own voices and just show you another piece of the voice that you may not be familiar with.
Right.
And I really do think that's where we're headed. I think so. But yeah, sorry. I get so like, I don't know how to I get so like excited talking with people who are also innovative people, who also are thinking past what the stagnant state of things.
Mhm.
And it really gets my own creative juices flowing. I think it gets other people's creative juices flowing. And that's one of the reasons, we continue to bring What's the Tea with ACP, is because through our conversations, we can inspire other people. We can inspire ourselves to keep creating. And what a better time? What better time than this, when things are so slow, than to come up with these new, innovative, novel tea ideas, right? So, but yeah, I thank you both for your brains, for your knowledge, and for your willingness to put in more work for yourself than you're receiving back. So putting in work to help others and to really help other people get to the next level, because it's going to come back to you tenfold. I truly believe that.
Oh, it already is. I mean, I think especially now, I'll speak for myself. It's mental health, one.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I think I've oh, hi, Kurt. Hi. It's being of service. It's like, you can't be the all about you. For me, it can't be the all about James show all the time. I've lived my life like that at moments, and it's not really satisfying. So, it is. If you help others, I'm in my work and in my life, I've always found shared success the sweetest
Mm-hmm.
aspect of collaboration, working with a team. So I see that as an extension, or this as an extension of that.
Yeah, I think for me it's a similar experience, right? Where like I felt like, I wanted to give, if I were to go back in the past and like give myself advice, it would have been more of like, okay, being open to communicating and creating a community with people that and so I want to be able to give that. I want to be able to like offer a space for people to like really find out information, and I feel gratified when people send me messages, which I get tons all the time. People are like, thank you for this, like this is the thing that has helped me overcome my fears about what's going to happen after the pandemic, or even back just during the regular audition season. People were like, wow, I just didn't know that information could be spread like this, and it really makes me feel good, because I want people to succeed. I don't, it's not about me. I want people to feel successful and engaged and have a support system there.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So much love in the space, so much helpfulness, so much amazing thought. Amazing thought. I really appreciate having you both on today. We're gonna kind of wrap up now, but I just want to say thank you again. Our Compass Projects would like to say thank you again for coming. Before we leave, can you both give a little plug about your businesses and anything you have upcoming?
Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can find me on social media. It's at Jordan W. Pitts. Yak Tracker is just Yak Tracker on Facebook. If you want to give us, an ad, there are questions you have to answer to get into the group, and those are mandatory. So make sure you answer them. And then things I have coming up. I mean, I have a few shows in the fall, which are really exciting. I'm doing a Dido and Aeneas with the Boston Camerata. Teatro Graticello is doing a Fedora, something that is not performed all the time. So there's that. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Just find me on Yak Tracker. Join the community.
Awesome. And what about you, James?
Yes, thanks again, Elliott and Oral Compass Projects. This has been amazing. Yeah, for me, so my website is jbmowdy, MOWDY.com, and that's where Opera Innovation lives. It's like I said, a pro bono content marketing and public relations platform. So if you have an idea that falls in our Venn diagram, or you want to look at our posts, we're on Instagram as Opera Innovation, also hashtag Opera Innovation. Please drop me a line if you'd like to contribute. We don't sell advertising on content, and it's really just meant to help your business or your endeavor. And also on jbmowdy.com, brand therapy consulting. It's private. It's through IG video and FaceTime or Zoom. And so if you're trying to figure out what your next steps are in your business, the business of you, the brand of you, the opera singer you, company, what have you, I'd be happy to have a confidential conversation with you. And that is pro bono. And I have no shows coming up in the fall.
Well, we want to say thank you again for joining us for What's the Tea with ACP. We want to thank you all for watching, and we want to give you a reminder that we will have another episode coming out on the 13th, 1 p.m. Eastern, and you can come back and see us right here. Check out our Facebook at Oral Compass Projects, our YouTube at Oral Compass Projects, and our Instagram at Oral Compass Projects. And also you can follow me at BIGELL91. That's Big L91. Again, I want to say thank you, and we so appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Alrighty. Thanks again for joining us for What's the Tea with ACP. Come back and join us on the 13th for our next episode. Bye-bye.